California coast, there's a predator on the loose. A giant with a mysterious past. Where many of its kind prowl the open ocean, something pulled this one off course, straight for shore, with deadly consequences.
In 50 years of analyzing shark attacks along the Pacific coast, these were two of the most violent and vicious attacks I've ever been involved with.
Two savage deaths on the same stretch of the same beach, exactly 2 years apart.
Right when I grabbed him, I looked into his eyes and I saw his life end.
I can never be comfortable at this beach. No one will be the same around here.
Sheer coincidence? Or has a tiny California beach become the hunting ground of a serial killer? They thought they'd found the perfect wave. For years, they've surfed here in paradise. A band of brothers riding endless swells rolling in from the Pacific. Not anymore. Today, Surf Beach in Lompoc, California, is deserted. A ghost town haunted by terrifying memories of two lost souls. But one man is determined to paddle out anyway. Like so many local surfers, Brandon McMillan can't go back in the water without being very afraid.
All I can think about when I was out there were the guys that were attacked here. I came back on shore with all arms and legs, and I'm still scared to death.
Brandon's obsession with the Surf Beach killings has propelled him on a personal mission. To find out if one shark could be responsible for both deaths. And if so, why? Helping him is shark researcher Ralph Collier, who's been studying attacks on the Pacific coast since the 1960s.
How many shark bites have you observed over the years with humans? Up and down the entire Pacific coast, 165.
The vast majority of these bites were non-fatal. The upshot of a shark investigating a strange object using its mouth.
Investigation bites by white sharks generally will leave tooth punctures in the subject, and of course they have to have medical treatment for that, but generally they're non-fatal.
But what happened at Surf Beach was something entirely different.
How do these attacks at Surf Beach compare to other attacks you've investigated?
In 50 years of analyzing shark attacks along the Pacific coast, these two were the most violent events I've ever been involved with.
The attacks on the Surf Beach victims weren't carried out by a curious shark. This was full-bore hunting mode.
Predatory attacks are very vicious, they're very high energy, and they're over in a split second.
At Surf Beach, memorials honor the dead. The first attack victim was Lucas Ransom.
This is Lucas Ransom Memorial, October 22nd, 2010. Moments before our 19-year-old was killed by a great white shark here at this spot, he took some of the biggest waves of his life. For all those who look upon his namesake, may God give you strength, courage, and peace. May you be inspired to make each day count.
There was an eyewitness to the attack. Matt Garcia, a close friend, was only a few feet away from Ransom when the shark suddenly appeared.
Do you guys surf Beach often?
No. The first time we went there was the last time we went there.
Can you talk me through the attack?
So we're sitting about the distance we are now during the attack, and I just heard something break the water behind me. Then I looked over, and then it grabbed him. And he's looking directly at me. And, you know, he asked for help. The last thing he did was ask for help. And I looked at him, and I said, Luke, you have to swim to me. So he took, you know, two big, valiant strokes, and he just dropped.
The shark had bitten off Lucas's leg at the hip, and he was bleeding profusely. Matt grabbed him and swam as hard as he could.
Was he alive when you brought him to shore?
Right when I grabbed him, he was still alive. I pretty much I looked into his eyes, and I saw his life end. All the blood in his body was gone.
While much of Lompoc was still reeling in horror, Ralph Collier got to work.
Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department asked if I would assist them in their forensic examination to see if we could determine the species of shark involved and also the possible size of the animal.
It didn't take long to determine that the killer was a great white shark.
First off, how do you know it was a great white?
The tooth impressions left behind by the animal, not only in the surfboard, but in the victims. Hand me that white shark jaw, and I'll show you what I mean. Their teeth are very distinctive. You can see from this jaw, there's this large space in between each tooth. They're serrated, they're very sharp, and when they penetrate, they leave a very distinct impression.
Based on the bite marks alone, Collier estimated the shark to be at least 16 feet in length. Matt Garcia thinks it was even bigger.
So exactly how big would you say the shark was?
About 18 feet.
Lucas Ransom was the first fatal attack ever at Surf Beach. At the time, it seemed like a random, tragic event. But then, to everyone's horror, the nightmare played out again. October 23rd, 2012. 2 years and 1 day after Lucas's death, Francisco Solorio, a Surf Beach regular, paddled out as he'd done countless times before. Gary Montenegro was surfing with Fran that day. This is the first time he's been back since.
It's been over 4 months, and really didn't want to come back, but he's got to come back sometime. What happened that day, October 23rd, 2012? It was really good. We all caught really good waves. Fran had an exceptionally awesome day. And then it all happened.
Detective Todd Henslin of the Santa Barbara County Coroner's Office was an investigator on the case.
Speaking with his surfing partner, they were both sitting on their surfboards approximately 30 feet from each other. And then when he looked over, that's when he described as seeing the back fin and the tail of what he described as a shark out of the water, and his friend was gone.
I was there out of the corner of my eye, and he wasn't that far from me, and basically swam over and helped him in. It was a really good day. It's the worst day of my life.
Cause of death, massive wound to the torso.
These actions are very violent, very devastating injuries that this individual sustained, as well as the one 2 years prior. There was a lot of blood loss. The time of death is going to be within seconds.
When you were helping your friend ashore, did you think the shark was going to come back? Oh, definitely. I just figured any second I was number two.
Gary was lucky, but it doesn't feel that way to him.
I've never been through anything close to this. Post-traumatic stress is a pretty weird thing.
Again, Ralph Collier was called in.
And you can see by the individual tooth punctures that this is the lower jaw from the white shark. The spacing between the teeth is what gives us the measurements of the animal, its size.
And again, Ralph determined that the killer was a great white, 16 feet or larger.
They estimated 16 foot, and I would say it was every bit of that.
Researchers estimate that there are only 220 great white sharks in California waters. Only a handful of those have grown to 16 feet or longer, which means there's a very short list of suspects. And one of those suspects may have developed a fatal attraction to Surf Beach. But the great whites always return to the scene of an attack. The mystery leads into the hunting ground of some of the most aggressive sharks on the planet. There's a mystery brewing in the waters off Surf Beach in Central California. Two deadly attacks, exactly 2 years apart, have left an entire community still living in fear, with so many unanswered questions. Did one brazen shark commit both of these attacks? If so, what was the motive? Why Surf Beach? While this small town mourns the loss of two sons, local California surfer Brandon McMillan searches for answers halfway around the world.
Wow.
Stewart Island, New Zealand, home to some of the biggest, most aggressive great whites on the planet. Auckland Beach, New Zealand, has experienced the same kind of brutal shark attacks as California. Brandon's goal is to compare the aggressive nature of great whites in New Zealand to the accounts of the fatal shark attacks at Surf Beach. It looks like he's found the right classroom to learn everything he can about the great white shark. Peter Scott has been working with these sharks for 8 years.
You guys had a shark attack recently up in Auckland. Do you think it's the same sharks up there that hang around this island right here that did the attack?
Possibly it was one that was migrating through.
Do you see a lot of patterns in these sharks? Do they come back and do the same thing year after year?
Yeah, pretty much. They generally arrive in mid-December, and then within a week of each other, they'll all disappear, just up and go, and it's a distinct pattern.
Do all these sharks have different personalities?
Oh, for sure. We've all got different characters. Like you've got this one that's down here at the moment, Slash. Sort of quite aggressive for his size, you know, he'll push in front of the bigger ones.
Researchers can identify individual sharks by scars and fin irregularities. Unfortunately, in the Surf Beach attacks, none of the eyewitnesses remember any distinguishing features. There's no mistaking Slash. He became a local legend after escaping a fisherman's hook, leaving him deeply scarred and perhaps a bit angry. Based on the reports from Surf Beach, Slash would be nearly the same size as the shark in both fatal attacks. A massive specimen.
That thing is seriously this big around.
Not only is he the most aggressive shark Peter Scott has ever encountered, he's a strategist and a master of the sneak attack. Just like the giant, rumored to be stalking Surf Beach.
If he can't get our bait from one angle, he'll try something totally different. He'll come right up off the bottom and see how good see him coming.
When baits are used around the boat, Slash always displays his dominance by taking the prize away from other sharks.
It's a great way to test for the aggression of these animals.
Today, there are 6 great whites circling the boat, waiting for food.
Here we go. He's coming. Oh, pull! Got it!
The first to grab the bag of tuna is a 15-footer.
Oh, my God!
This is the most powerful bite in the entire animal kingdom. Next on the bait, a giant that the crew estimates to be close to 18 feet and possibly 2 tons.
Oh, he's just not letting go. He's not letting go. Oh, my God. He just won't let go of it. Look at him. He's still... Oh, my God. That was a big fish.
Then, Slash takes a turn, and sheer aggression wins the prize.
He just won't let go of it. Look at him. He's still... Oh, my God. Oh, my God. But his tail just smacked the water and splashed me for good measure. That's a powerful animal right there. That's insane.
But the most dangerous sharks aren't the ones you see. They're the ones you never see coming, as the Surf Beach victims discover too late. Is it possible that a fish could sense vulnerability in a human?
You guys ready? Yep. Okay.
Brandon decides to test this theory on the shark's turf.
So now I got 1, 2, 3, 4 sharks, one with a bad attitude, and I'm ready to jump in there. I need my head checked.
You put a hand on either of those wells, slot straight in.
The plan is to lure a shark into a sneak attack, like the Surf Beach victims endured.
This cage is specifically built with bars on every side except the front, which is all plexiglass. So when I jump in there and float out 30, 40 yards, I'm going to look like an easy target for these sharks.
The sharks are shy at first, but as soon as Brandon turns his back, they close the gap. And when Brandon takes an even more vulnerable position, the animal's confidence grows. Then, out of nowhere, an 18-footer shows up. But a cage may not be enough to stop it. But pulling Brandon out now would only put him in greater danger. The safest place is in the cage, if the cage stays in one piece. One float is punctured. If the shark takes out the other one, the cage could sink to the bottom, leaving Brandon trapped. In the waters off Surf Beach, California, a shark attacked and killed 2 surfers, almost exactly 2 years apart. In both cases, forensic evidence revealed the perpetrator to be a huge great white, 16 feet or bigger, that staged an ambush attack, behavior rarely used on humans. Is there something that triggered this aggression? California surfer Brandon McMillan's quest for answers has taken him halfway around the world to the waters of New Zealand.
So now I got 1, 2, 3, 4 sharks, one with a bad attitude, and I'm ready to jump in there. I need my head checked.
Here, in this great white hotspot, he hopes to gain a better understanding of the suspect he's tracking. In a tiny one-man cage, he is testing the theory that these predators can sense human vulnerability. Light metal bars and a thin piece of plexiglass is all that separates him from this 18-foot, 2-ton giant. Unable to chomp down on Brandon, the shark changes tack, attacking the cage directly. Getting back in the boat is too dangerous. That's when Brandon is at his most vulnerable. The shark could turn and launch in a split second.
Keep coming up, keep coming up, keep coming up. Go, down. Yeah.
He grabbed the side buoy of my cage. He latched onto it and he started shaking it. His body kept hitting my cage over and over. And I got scared to death because I thought my cage was going down. I thought, here goes again. He goes again. There's no match for Mother Nature.
One can't help but imagine the victims at Surf Beach in their final moments. Back in California, a possible new lead on their killer's identity. The great white shark that killed Lucas Ransom in 2010 has left a clue behind. At Lucas Ransom's autopsy, shark researcher Ralph Collier and the coroner found shark tooth fragments embedded in the body.
Can we get DNA from them? Possible. Nobody's ever gotten DNA from tooth fragments. Old teeth, yes. Tooth fragments, no.
Do you have the teeth?
Well, that's a problem.
More than 2 years after the attack, Ralph isn't sure if those tooth fragments are still in evidence. Time for Brandon to find out. No tooth fragments were found in the second attack on Fran Solorio. So if there is any DNA from the first attack, it can't be used for comparison. But it could give Ralph Collier a whole new insight into the culprit's genetic makeup. The search for the fragments has led Brandon to the Santa Barbara County Coroner's Office. Detective Jose Alvarez was the officer in charge of Luke Ransom's case.
You guys don't get a lot of shark attacks in Santa Barbara County. So what makes this even more strange is you get 2 attacks on basically the exact same date, 2 years apart. Do you find that strange?
It's a freaky coincidence.
What about 2014? What if it happens again?
Then I think there needs to be some research done. But based on those 2 incidents, all I can say is it's a coincidence.
You know why I'm here. I've come to see if you guys ever found the teeth fragments in the Ransom case.
As a matter of fact, we have.
You did?
Yes, we did.
This is great news.
But first, Brandon needs to get permission to have the shark teeth DNA tested from the Ransom family. Travis Ransom is Luke's older brother.
Tell me about the phone call you got when you found out Lucas was attacked.
It was tough to hear, but I understood it. It's something that I knew was possibility out there.
What was the first thing that came to your mind when you found out Francisco was attacked at the same beach in 2012?
The news was unreal, and it basically told me there's something off there, and I'm not going to surf there again.
The Ransom family is well aware of the tooth fragments found during the autopsy.
Can we get your permission to test them for DNA?
Yeah, I think that'd be a great thing if you guys could look into that.
At the Ransom home, Lucas's mother, Candace, reminisces about her boys surfing together.
Lucas, you see from when they were young. They loved the water, you know? You guys are best buddies, you know, everything together. He had a smile that would really melt your heart, a little twinkle in his eyes. Just live life to its fullest. That was at the paddle out where that was his favorite color, green, so everybody was sending up messages to him. He did what we love the most, you know?
After you learned about the death of another surfer, Francisco, at Surf Beach in 2012, did it come to your attention that there might be something unusual going on at that beach?
I couldn't help but think that. It was exactly 2 years, same spot. To me, it wasn't a coincidence. Is there some kind of pattern to this? Is this some kind of rogue shark that keeps coming back to that area? Yeah, you have to wonder what is involved there.
It all hits home when Mrs. Ransom plays Lucas's last phone message, recorded shortly before her son was killed.
Hey, Mom, it's me, Lucas. Yeah, I'm over here at the beach. Oh my gosh, those waves are like enormous. I got out there, nobody was out there, and there was like a bunch of people on the beach just watching. And I got out there, and I got one of the nicest rides I think I've ever had. I was going so fast, and I went out there, and I flew up in the air, and I came down and landed it. It was sweet. I took it all the way in, and I was like, my heart stopped. It was so crazy. But yeah, just right now I'm just laying in the sun because it's really sunny, so I'm probably gonna go back out a little later. So okay, well, just calling to tell you what's going on. Thanks, buddy. Bye.
Little did anyone know, Lucas would never be coming home again.
The teeth left behind in the Lucas Ransom attack are the only hard evidence we have. If we could only extract DNA from those teeth, we might be able to find out so much more about this shark. Possibly where it came from, and even its ancestry.
After Brandon recovers the teeth from the coroner's office, Ralph Collier takes them to a local university for testing.
Brian, these are some tooth fragments. I'd like to see if we can get some DNA from that, maybe?
DNA expert Dr. Brian Swig searches the fragments for the tiniest shred of genetic material. Unfortunately, the fragments are just too small. Once again, the killer shark stays one step ahead of the investigation. Since 2000, only 5 people have been killed by great whites off the California coast. But 2 of those deaths occurred at Surf Beach, exactly 2 years apart. Scott Martinson is a Surf Beach local who spent years in the water there. But after his friend Franz Lorio's death in 2012, he's in no hurry to go back.
I wasn't there. I would have been there. Fortunate for me, that morning, I had to take my brother to the airport. I was in shock. It was surreal. Something like that happening to someone closest to us.
But Scott has had a shark encounter of his own.
Yeah, on my paddleboard. The one came up beside me, and then it did this turn back out to sea, and that's when I saw its full shape. And right then I just went, wow, that's a white. December 21st, 2008. Never forget that day.
But as Brandon discovers, Scott's encounter wasn't the only one in 2008. On September 7th of that year, winemaker and surfer Kyle Knapp survived a terrifying great white attack.
So how long you been working here? A little over 2 years.
Inches away from rows of teeth, he made a narrow escape.
So his bottom teeth were here. He grabs the top, thrusts you completely off your board.
When that happened, I was literally getting lifted out of the water. I didn't know what was going on, so what I did, though, is I just slid off my board. It wasn't until I was in the water that I realized what was going on. I was, like shoulder to shoulder with this shark with my surfboard in its mouth. I can see all the pores and, the protective casing that goes over the eye. He thrashed around, the tail hit me, and then it was just gone. I haven't surfed there since, and I don't know. I don't know if I'll go back.
2008, 2010, and 2012. The pattern seems clear.
They're largely open ocean animals that travel and periodically visit the coast.
Brandon talks to shark expert Sean Van Someren to find out more about the suspect's movements.
There have been numerous animals photo ID'd, returning to various sites, very close to 2 or 3 year intervals.
So it's not uncommon for white sharks to keep coming back to the same places then?
No. In fact, they do show a lot of site fidelity and a rather closed timetable. Some are very punctual.
Especially pregnant females.
Within the population of sharks, you're actually going to have several very complicated migratory routes. A late-term, gravid, pregnant female is going to diverge off from the rest of the population.
Could Surf Beach have become a hangout for pregnant great whites?
Although white sharks migrate up and down the Pacific coast, they tend to congregate at specific locations. We call these locations anchor points. Surf Beach is one of those anchor points. Another location is here, just a little bit north of Santa Cruz, all the way up to the mouth of San Francisco Bay.
What are all these arrows?
These are shark attacks.
These are all shark attacks?
Yes.
From white sharks?
Yes.
This concept of anchor points is the basis of a fascinating study comparing great whites with human serial killers.
Anchor points?
Yes.
I'm not calling a white shark a serial killer, but serial killers use anchor points.
Yes, they do. Most apex predators use them too. Lions, bears, and in this case, sharks.
The analogy isn't a frivolous one. Renowned criminal profiler Kim Rossmo, based in Austin, Texas, has co-authored a research paper comparing white shark hunting techniques with those of human serial killers. And though it's a controversial comparison, the numbers don't lie.
This is a criminal hunting algorithm. It describes mathematically the relationship between where a criminal lives and where they're most likely to offend.
This geographic profiling has been a very successful tool for catching serial killers. How would it apply to great white sharks?
Well, we were interested if we might be able to detect some sort of pattern in how sharks hunted for their prey.
Rossmo discovered that great white sharks hunting at Seal Island, South Africa, had specific hangouts called anchor points, where they could successfully ambush seals time and time again.
Sharks don't have a base like criminals do. They don't have a nest or a burrow or a den, so we weren't sure if we would find any anchor point at all. When we ran it through the geographic profiling analysis, it ended up that they did have an anchor point, that there was a pattern. Their attacks were not random.
The similarities don't end there. Like human serial killers, great whites target specific victims using a distinct MO. The anchor point is a place where the great white can attack from below without being seen. And in most cases, the sharks are selecting victims that are young and inexperienced. But the biggest difference between human serial killers and great white sharks is motivation. Humans kill for psychological reasons, and sharks kill simply to survive.
If we just understand the commonalities, we can sometimes get insights from one for the other. And if we can understand the underlying patterns associated with our behavior, then we can make predictions. In some cases, those predictions can actually help prevent criminal attacks or shark attacks.
Now, we know there's a limited number of sharks in that region, about 200. We also know that the description of these sharks matched almost exactly. Everything you're telling me leads me to believe that this could have been the same shark killing these two people. Would that be a legitimate theory?
Well, it's a theory, it's a possibility, but...
What do you think is happening at Surf Beach?
Well, let's look at the two alternatives. It's one particular shark who's returning, or there's something about that particular environment, that particular location, that makes it attractive to sharks.
Is it possible that something could be luring one particular shark to Surf Beach? Could there be a shocking secret hidden in these waters? An invisible clue to explain everything.
Why more and more sharks may be hunting humans? Sharkpocalypse. Shark Week continues tomorrow at 9 on Discovery.
After two fatal attacks at Surf Beach, a profile of the killer or killers is emerging. It's likely a female great white because of the 2-year migration pattern, between 16 and 18 feet in length, with an ambush style of attack usually reserved for feeding.
There's one thing I can predict. After an attack in October 2010 and October 2012, I won't be surfing here in October 2014.
But why here? What is it about this spot that's made it a hunting ground for sharks?
Hey, Ron. Hey, Peter. How you doing? All right, Peter, this is Brandon. Brandon.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Come on in.
SEAL expert Peter Howarth may be able to shed some light on the mystery.
What's causing it? More sharks. Short answer. Simple as that.
He spent the last 40 years rescuing pinnipeds.
So now what? Oh, we check him in, get some food and nutrition into him, and start getting him better.
I understand you bring a lot of seals in here with shark bites.
Yeah, we've been having more and more as the years have been progressing here, especially in the last few years. It used to be one every several years, then it was maybe 1 or 2 a year, and then we had 6 in one day that we know of. Those are the ones that made it ashore, so those are just the tip of the iceberg.
A census of California's white shark population released in 2011 put their numbers at around 220. That may be low. Laws to protect the great white have been in place since 1994, and with California's seal population exploding to nearly 400,000, it seems logical that the shark population would be flourishing too. But Surf Beach has relatively few seals. So why do great whites hunt there? The answer may be found in one startling, overlooked clue.
I remember something Matt Garcia told me about the day that Lucas was attacked.
As we walked out, there was the smell of fish, the smell of bait fish.
And here's another coincidence. Gary said just about the same thing.
There was bait balls of fish all over. It was really weird.
In both attacks, the eyewitnesses say they smelled fish. Fish that may have been dying. Fish that may have been poisoned by a substance called domoic acid.
Domoic acid is a neurotoxin found in marine algae, and it can be deadly to fish.
I'd never heard of domoic acid until I spoke with Lucas Ransom's mother. Like any mom who's lost a child, she wants answers. And when she went digging, she discovered there were incredibly high levels of domoic acid at Surf Beach.
Basically, Surf Beach is the epicenter for this neurotoxin you're saying.
It kind of made my heart stop when I read that and saw that, and I just thought, wow, that's kind of...
It's off the charts.
It's remarkable. Surf Beach is the site of the last 2 fatal shark attacks in California, and it also has the highest levels of domoic acid on the entire West Coast.
Domoic acid doesn't just kill fish. It also works its way up the food chain to pinnipeds, the white shark's favorite prey.
It is possible domoic acid, being at high levels, would present drunken seals, or lethargic seals, making it perhaps easier for the white sharks to catch them. If it's one of the highest concentrations along the California coast, it's going to make an area that's, highly attractive to sharks.
It's been suggested that pollution, runoff from agriculture, may be partly to blame for this rise in toxins.
An overlooked condition that may bring more and more sharks to Lompoc's coastline every year. This small, peaceful community has been thrust into the middle of a real-life Jaws movie.
Mr. Mayor, do you realize that you have a shark problem here in Lompoc?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you'd have to be silly to not say there was a problem with what's happened. The difficulty is understanding whether the shark you're seeing next year is the one that was here last year, or if it's another shark. And that's the real problem. They don't have license plates.
Surf Beach has brought tragedy.
It didn't deserve to happen. He's a good guy. His family. The guy did everything right.
Unshakable memories.
I don't want to lose those memories, but,
And unbearable grief.
I asked the Holy Father to...
Without conclusive DNA evidence, there's no way of knowing for sure if a single shark is prowling Surf Beach. The locals have moved on to other beaches. But come October 2014, all eyes will be back on this haunted beach, watching and waiting for the possible return of a serial killer.